And welcome once again to Leto's Law. I'm Steve Leto, attorney at law in the state of Michigan, where I've been practicing law for 28 years in the fields of consumer protection and lemon law. And I will tell you right now that I'm suffering from a cold. I'm not going to claim that I'm on my deathbed or that I've got bubonic plague or anything, but I did have a cold a couple days ago. Very, very sore throat, scratchy. Right now, it's basically a little bit of head congestion and stuff. So if I say anything remarkably stupid today, give me a break, okay? So I'm glad to see people checking in already. Another mystery was solved, by the way, as I was setting up today's live feed. I noticed that when I punched in that I wanted to do it at 1 o'clock, it said 1 o'clock Pacific time. And so I've got to figure out how to set the clock into there. But I did the math on it, and it looks like most people figured out 1 o'clock. And also, we managed to get on live the first time I hit the live button, which is a huge, huge bonus. So David Griffiths, hey, Steve, finally made it to another live. Thank you very much. Too Much Sugar, Tucson, Arizona. And Vehicle Violence is you're being sued. That would be the first of the three things that they have in a summons to tell you that you're being sued. Oh, and by the way, just to let you know, one of the things I've done today, which I hope will benefit me in the future, is I've actually brought out, I dug out and loaded my, I have a cough button. So apparently, if I'm going to cough, I can go like this and go, and you shouldn't have heard that. So I did test it earlier today, and the audio is clipping. Oh boy, I hope it's not the cough button. Make sure these things are all plugged in properly. They should be. So, wait, is the audio popping or is it clipping? Because there's a difference. The question is whether it's picket fencing or whether it's crackling in the audio. Audio is bad. So the question is, what happens if I were to unplug this stuff and reconnect it properly without, now Mark, hey, Mark Henriksen. Mark is in the house. Mark, how you doing? Mark's my good friend who spent a lot of time in the auto industry. If one person's getting good audio, that means that theoretically you all should be now. So in that case, it's your fault, not mine. Sorry. By the way, I also do have fluids to drink just in case I lose any issues there. So crackling, clipping, sounds fine. Those are three opinions in a row. It's crackling, it's clipping, it sounds fine. So don't know what to tell you. Mark, I'll tell you right now, this microphone's not a lemon. If anything's a lemon, it's the operator. Operator error. By the way, several people did point out to me that I mentioned last week that I have a brother who makes furniture. I've mentioned him many times before. And then I also mentioned, I said, by the way, on a side note, I've got another brother who made guitars briefly. He doesn't do it anymore, but I said he makes guitars. In fact, I've got one. And somebody said, go get it. And I said, well, like it's not handy, so I couldn't go get it. But I did bring the guitar with me to today's show. So this is an electric guitar made by my brother. And you'll see there, you can see it says Bruce Leto. And there's the back side. There's the front side. There's the cool tuning heads. And I'll tell you right now that I am tone deaf and as unmusical as a person who ever walked the face of the earth. So I am incapable of even strumming it or plugging it in. I'm not going to even attempt. So I just wanted to let you know that the guitar was real. And I proved it for you. There you go. So there you go. Bill Van Ram, Steve, is there any point in dodging a summons? Not really, because they're going to get you either way. And if they can't get you, if they put the effort into it, they can go through alternate service. Some court's going to say, yeah, if you want to, you can go tape it to the guy's door and consider him served, or mail it to them first class and post it at the courthouse. And so they'll get service on you one way or the other, unless you can really like vanish from the face of the earth, like, move out of state or something. But even then, they can get alternate service on you. So you'll probably wind up with a default judgment or fighting to get a default set aside if you decide to do that. So if someone's trying to serve you, I wouldn't dodge them. But, that's just me. See here. Casey Menke, the nihilist trucker, says, looks like something Brian Jones would have played. Yeah, it's got kind of a retro, kind of a Flying V feel to it in my mind. But my brother's a very good guitar player. I'm not. So that makes all the difference in the world. By the way, for those of you who don't know, a couple days ago, I did a guest venture with Leonard French of Lawful Masses, the channel on YouTube. And somebody mentioned last week, and I apologize for not knowing, but somebody said, why don't you and Leonard do a joint video together? And I said, well, I've reached out to him in a kind of a half-hearted manner. I used a different body part there. I said hearted. And somebody kindly sent him a note and said, Steve Leto said he'd like to do a show with you. And Leonard sent me a very nice note back and said, Steve, I'd love to do a show with you. I apologize. I've just been busy moving and stuff. So we got together earlier this week, and with the wonders of modern technology, I hooked my stuff together. He hooked his stuff together. We did it through Skype, but then I Dropboxed my videos to him and complicated, and his guys stitched them together. But there is a video where he and I discussed just legal stuff, mainly just war stories about being attorneys and goofy stuff we've heard attorneys say and so on, for 1 hour. And the video went up Friday night on the Lawful Masses channel. And it was doing very well last I saw. And I got a lot of very, very nice comments from people who came over to my channel and said, hey, Steve, I didn't know who you were until I saw you on Lawful Masses with Leonard French. So Leonard is going to be on my show in the very near future. And we're going to do it so that I interview him kind of, and he'll Dropbox me his files, and then I'll mash them together. It won't be an hour-long video because I ain't got that kind of time. But we will put out a video together, and we will also probably do some more down the road, especially when we can find topics that appeal to both of us and both of our audiences. Ironically, he has a channel about the same size as mine, the same number of subscribers and everything. So although I suspect there's some overlap, I suspect there's also some groups of people who subscribe to one or not the other. So, yeah, Big Bird. No, I'm sorry, Big Dyro. Learned about you from Leonard French. Yeah. Lawrence Taylor, afternoon, can't stay but wanted to pop in and show the love. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. David White, LA County sent me a Christmas present, a jury summons. There you go. Merry Christmas. Ronald Knight, San Antonio, says hi. I just did a story. It'll go up tomorrow about a thing in San Antonio where a process server served the wrong guy, and it made the news. Not really that big of a deal legally, except that it was an attorney not doing his job. Duncan Campbell checking in from Melbourne, Australia, my friend. I hope you're staying safe. Australia's got some pretty bad fires going on, really bad. And so it's a horrible, horrible thing. So there you go. Mark Hendrickson. Okay, story time. Tell the listeners a client that came in and when done, you thought you got to be kidding me and declined helping them. I'm not sure if I've actually had too many of those. And I've got one or two that I can't tell simply because I don't think they would appreciate me telling the story. So Matt Sanchez, is that a Rickenbacker? No, this is not a Rickenbacker. This guitar here, as I mentioned earlier, in case you just tuned in, is a B. Leto. It's a Bruce Leto. My brother used to make guitars, and that's one of them. So there you go. Zebulon Strait, got to leave at 1:30. Michigan versus Michigan State basketball. That should be a good one. Michigan's doing pretty good this year. And they got a pretty cool coach, one of the former Fab Five guys. So you got to like that. Have I ever served on a grand jury? Carrie MTI. No, I have not. And Michigan does not use that many grand juries. Michigan allows a one-man grand jury where basically a judge sits as a grand jury. It's kind of an unusual procedure. And the only time we ever hear about the grand juries that bring in the 20 people off the street and have them here is usually for things like organized crime or big crime waves or things. And they only happen once every few years. And I've never sat on one or been called or know anybody who has. I know someone who got a grand jury notice for another state in Florida, and they were telling me about it. I said, "That's interesting." I said, "Did you serve?" And they said, "No, but they went and did the jury selection, and during the jury selection, they were told the grand jury is going to be seated for months, but you'll only need to be here one day a week for several months." So they're trying to make it to where people could do it, but it was going to be a long period of time. And obviously that rules out a ton of people who can't do it. So very, very strange situation. Ann L, I was on a grand jury. Very interesting, but you can't talk about what happened. Yeah, that's the thing. Grand juries conduct their hearings in secret. And they almost never get publicized what happens in them. There are some situations where if a person gets indicted by a grand jury, they have the right to see the underlying stuff that led to the indictment. So if you get indicted by a grand jury, you might get access to those transcripts. But then the question is whether or not those transcripts can ever be publicized, or you might be able to use them in court, but there's going to be limitations on that. When is the Canadian Robot going to be on the live show? I'm still working on the technicalities of all this stuff. If there was some way to patch her in, I would do it. I'm just not sure. People out there who know more about the internet and audio video might be able to walk me through it. But right now, I'm literally just using a video camera, my microphone, running it into a web presenter into the computer. And I would need to run another line in here somehow. So don't know about how to do that. So somewhere down the road, but I will do another video with her. We did a fairly long interview video where we talked about she's Canadian. We've disclosed that, and she worked in radio for a while. And so we talked about a lot of our common radio stories and so on, and that was a lot of fun. So there's a lot of stuff that we didn't cover, and there's a lot of stuff that that we will cover someday down the road and get to that. So there you go. In 1 year of grand jury for my friend and never had a no bill returned. Yeah, Mark is pointing out that what grand juries do is they indict people, and the level for indicting somebody is so low. There's the old joke that one judge said, if you wanted to, you could indict a ham sandwich, because all you have to do is prove that there's probable cause to believe that a crime was committed and probable cause to believe this person did it. And at the grand jury, the defendants don't get to call witnesses, cross-examine anybody. It's all basically very, very one-sided. So most grand juries, if they go after somebody, they'll indict somebody. And if they don't, it either means there really was no crime, or that someone's not doing their job. So there you go. Let's see here. Do a collaboration with Scotty Kilmer on lemons. Yeah, I don't know Scotty. I've watched a few of his videos, but I don't know Scotty. Blimp Commander says, just did one with Plain Savers yesterday using Skype. 2 of us visitors on the show. But did you Skype it live, or did you Skype it, record it, and then upload it as a video? Because I know how to do that. I'm just wondering how to do a live studio YouTube feed with somebody who's not here piped into the live thing. So there you go. MH08 points out that didn't a ham sandwich kill Mama Cass? And of course, no, but that's that's a great lesson in understanding history and how people attribute things based on good stories versus good facts. John Benson, why do lawyers slip negatives into questions such as, didn't you meet the accused on Saturday night? If the witness didn't meet the correct answer, should be yes, and creates a confused jury. Generally speaking, lawyers shouldn't ask confusing questions because it does not get a very good message across to the jury. What you often will hear, however, is attorneys who ask questions that can only be answered a certain way. And on cross-examination between, if they're doing that correctly, there's nothing wrong with it. So if I know for a fact that a guy got arrested on Saturday, I can ask him, isn't it true you got arrested on Saturday? And the guy's got to answer that question, yes. But if you start asking things like, isn't it not true that you weren't not arrested on, I'm not licking toads. It doesn't do much good unless your entire defense is confuse the jury. And I've seen attorneys do that, but there's a question as to how useful that might actually be. Michael Clark says the ham sandwich was an eyewitness. The ham sandwich was more of an innocent bystander. The ham sandwich was there. I don't know if it saw anything. So, 5153 Flash says, had a lawyer say something was non-discontinued. What does that mean? I don't know. I'd have to see the context. I saw you ask that question previously. I forgot if it was here or on a video, and I don't know what that would mean. I know there are things called continuances. You can get a continuance on something, meaning that they're going to adjourn it and put it over. But I've never heard of non-discontinued. I don't know what that means. I wonder if it might be a slightly different word or something. One objection is to ask the counselor to simplify the question. Nick, yeah, one of the worst things to happen in court is an attorney asks a witness a very, very well-crafted question. And then either the witness or a judge or a opposing counsel goes, excuse me, what? Objection, like vague or confusing or I don't. And I've actually seen somebody ask a question that was so bad that the judge goes, I don't know what the objection is, but just ask it better, So a good cross-examination, assuming you know the answers that the person's going to give to questions, involves you asking simple questions, just chipping away at something. Isn't it true that you were there on Thursday the 19th? Isn't it true you were there on Thursday the 19th when such and such happened? Isn't it true you were in this particular room? Isn't it true? And you can have the person going, yes, 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 yes. And looking at just the witness's side of the testimony sounds really boring. But if the questions are correct and you get the person to admit all along, it's I've actually remember having a professor in law school say you're basically like grabbing them, she said, by the leash, but it's actually more like you're grabbing them by like the ear, like to a little kid, and dragging them around the courtroom, because you can make them give the answers you want if you know what the answers are. So there you go. Vintage 1957. Do you actually practice law? How do you have the time? Yes, I do. I'm licensed and practicing in Michigan, although I will admit that I do spend a decent amount of time making videos. But if you watch my videos, and this is a little secret, very little editing goes into my videos. I start the recorder and I hit stop. I mean, there's no fancy editing going on. So I put up 2 10, 15-minute videos a day. I say I spend about an hour putting them together. And I still have time to watch TV. So, I actually do have a legal practice. Back when I wrote books, people would say, Steve, how do you write books and practice law? So I haven't written a book in a couple of years. I'm working on some stuff right now, but if you lay your time out right, if you budget your time properly, you can find time to do a lot of stuff. I know people who say, how do you do all that stuff? And I go, what do you do during the day? And they tell me, I'm like, I bet you could find time to jam in there if you wanted to. So, are manufacturer's extended warranties enforceable after the statute of limitations? Typically 4 years. It varies by state. Russell Silverstein. A manufacturer's extended warranty in most cases is going to be treated as a warranty or a contract question. But if it's a warranty issue, warranties run 4 years. And the question then becomes, is it 4 years from the day you got the contract or 4 years from the breach? And is the breach considered to be when they failed to fix it, refused to fix it, or does it go back to when you bought the contract? That varies from state to state. I know it's confusing, but generally speaking, it's going to be 4 years from the breach. And so the question then becomes is, when did you buy it? How long did you have it? When did something go wrong that they couldn't fix? And, there are problems. Like somebody's got a 5-year protection plan in a car, like an extended service contract, 5 years, and something goes wrong in the 5th year. If they file a lawsuit, many times the manufacturers will come into court, or the warrantors will come into court and say, we don't have to fix it. It's beyond 4 years, and the statute of limitations is run. It's a crazy argument, but I've heard it many times, and I've seen judges actually grant that. So, isn't it true is another example of a negative question versus is it true? John Benson. Yeah, but that's a pretty straightforward question. Most people know what you're asking there. Isn't it true that you did this? Is it true you did this? Is the question really that different? So, Mark Henriksen, one question I was asked when on the stand, in your preparation of this case, is there someone you don't know that would know there's a history of this problem? Objection, calls for speculation. Yeah, and Mark, I'll apologize to you on behalf of the legal profession. I know Mark, by the way, so those of you who are wondering why I'm giving such deference to somebody who's pointing something like this out. And the reason is that Mark testified in many cases involving warranty claims. And attorneys will occasionally ask questions that aren't crafted very well. And I've actually seen an attorney who clearly had a mind slip gear situation or something, where they asked a question. It was like the first half of one question, the second half of another question. It's like, what? But anytime you ask somebody about is it possible this, or is there anybody in the universe? Hey, anything's possible, but it calls for speculation on my part. So there you go. JJ CEO 40. When your bookcase is completed, will it be designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site? Considering how long I've been talking about it and how much effort's going into getting it here, it should be designated something. But I will let you know something else, that a few people in my audience who are very, very OCD notice that my OEDs are off a fraction of an inch. So if you look at the height of this and compare it to the height of that, there's something wrong. And now that I pointed out to you, it's going to mess with your head for the rest of the day. But my bookcase, I believe, is level. Now, the floors underneath all of this might not be. That might be the problem. So I'm going to let you know right now that when the bookcases get here, and they will get here, I promise you, when the bookcases get here, I'm going to go to the store and buy a big level, not a small level, a big level. And I'm going to put it on that bookcase and make sure that it is level, plus or minus a millimeter on each end. And then I'm going to put my brother's bookcases, one there and one there, stock them with the OEDs, and make sure that not only are they level, but they're actually at the correct heights back there, so that once and for all, we will have this thing set to atomic time. There you go. Gerard Trigo says the connection is so choppy, I'm having trouble listening. Is anybody else having that kind of problems? I thought the problems were sketchy, at least, because if anybody's getting good signal, it shouldn't be that one person's getting a good one with somebody else getting a bad one. Paul Mattaliano, will the Lemon Law plate be going on the Viper? Unfortunately, this is not a real license plate. This is a license plate that somebody sent me, which says Lemon Law. But the problem, of course, is that Lemon Law is 8 letters. And I don't think you can get 8 letters in Michigan. And I also think somebody else has got one very close to this, who's one of my competitors. So now people are saying the audio is getting worse. So that's what happens when I ask, huh? All I can think of is that I plugged in the cough button. So I don't know why that would be, but because I tested it earlier and it worked fine in another video. So, On the YouTube app, the sound is fine. On smart TV, it's choppy. That's one I cannot help you with. No, I have not touched anything. The only thing I changed is I spliced a cough button, which I've not used a single time. I spliced a cough button in, and I suppose it's possible that did it. But I shot an entire video with that in place and listened to the audio, and it was perfect. So I'm not sure. It just cracked when you touched the mic. Okay. Well, if it gets worse and I'm moving around, that's simply the volume. That's not that can't be anything with the connections. So Jesse Thornburg, Viper snakeskin green. I'm not too crazy about the green Vipers. But something I'm going to play it by ear. In my mind, buying an older car like that, my number one concern is that I want to get one that's in good condition, unmodified, unchopped, unmessed with, that looks good, runs good. And then if the color is good, that's a bonus too. There you go. Ernest Prince, fire your engineer. I got news for you. You're looking at him. I am both the talent and the producer of this show. So there you go. Tim Thorson points out that he only tunes in for my coughing, and he's disappointed. May have to unsubscribe. I've had people unsubscribe for less. So there you go. Daniel Kelly, I have a philosophical question. Do lawyers exist because law is complicated, or is law complicated because lawyers exist? And, it's interesting because both are true, and I suspect it's a chicken and the egg kind of thing. Because on the one hand, laws can be complicated, but the main reason that they're complicated is that if they're not complicated, then they miss things. The second we say your driver's license to drive a motor vehicle, people go, what's a motor vehicle? So you define a motor vehicle, and they go, what's a motor? So you define a motor, and they go, okay, you want to drive that on the road? What's a road? And so you start having to define all these things. And then what happens is if you don't define those things, you get lawyers arguing over that. If you do define them, people still argue. So I don't know what to tell you. I think it's a little of both. Brianna CC, you have a pretty smile. Well, thank you. JJ CEO 40, which came first, lawyers or law? I suspect the law did. And then I suspect some people came along who said, something, I can help you with that. And I think there have always been situations in most cultures where there have been people who would go and speak on someone's behalf, whether as a lawyer or a representative or some kind of arbitrator or mediator or go-between or something. I think those roles have always existed. It's only in probably the last couple hundred years where we've actually said we're going to actually regulate and license the people who are allowed to stand up and speak for somebody else in certain situations. So, Sir Dialot, a lawyer who is his own engineer, has a fool for a technician. I agree with that 100%. Scott Allen, do you have a Stormy Kroner hat from Ironwood? No, I do not. Stormy Kroners are the hats that have got the flaps that go down and up like this. And there's actually a factory that makes them that's very, very well known for it in Ironwood. So now somebody suggested I could unplug the microphones and plug them back in. My concern is if I do that and it doesn't work, I might cause everything to crash. So I'm not going to do that just yet. Trifingers is motors, electrical, engine is internal combustion. That is a distinction that not everyone agrees with you on. For instance, there are boat motors. There's no question that we call engines on boats boat motors. So we also call them boat engines, but so. ACR Vids, I like your metal detector video. I work in construction, and we're always tearing up 50 to 100-year-old streets and sidewalks in D.C. If you're ever in town, bring your metal detector. Oh, those right there are gold mines. That is the best place to detect is at sidewalk tearouts. Especially older ones like that. I found so much cool stuff at sidewalk tearouts to blow your mind. So most cars have engines, not motors. Vintage 1957 says. Well, tell Tesla there that. So Mark Crater says, try snapping the cough button a couple times. Okay, well, here's the deal. In fact, right now, you should not be able to hear me talk. And there I was talking with the cough button. So did that work anything at all? Can you hear me? Testing. Testing 1, 2. Why won't you talk about the Caitlin Alex case in St. Louis? JC Regal. I am unfamiliar with the case. Didn't fix anything. Okay. The question is anything still broken though? And we can hear you through the button. That's odd. Because I think there's only one microphone here. With my luck, there's 2 microphones. I hadn't thought about that yet. Interesting. Daniel Kelly says that actually sync your voice back up. Top notch 50. What's with the hundo on the shelf? Where's the hundo right now? Hang on. It's actually kind of hard to see right now, but the hundo on the shelf is a reference to a bet I made a long time ago. I'll give that to the first person who shows me a Supreme Court citation for a case where the Supreme Court says you don't need a driver's license to drive a car in America. And they've never ruled that way. But there's websites that claim they have. And so I say, well, if they have, show it to me. So there's no such ruling. So let's see here. And Bob is guessing where it is, and he is correct. Do a test cough. Here, I'll turn my head and cough. 3, 2, 1. How was that? Bill Van Reem, Steve, have you ever embarrassed yourself in court? You know, I probably have, but I can't think of any examples of that. I can tell you that I've lost cases in court, which I find very embarrassing, but that hurts more than just an embarrassment situation. I'm trying to think, and I can't really think of any examples. I've seen other guys do stuff embarrassing in court, but but for the grace of God, so I won't go into that right now. JJ CEO, is there a northern accent with pronouncing the letter O? Give me a word. The letter O can be pronounced a million different ways. If you want to have a pronouncer, ask an example with the letter in a word. Is the intro lady in the room? 5155. No, she's in Canada. That's the opposite of being in the room. She's in Canada. So, videos by Al. You know, Al, you might be right. It could be the microphone on the computer itself is still picking up something. I disabled the camera on the laptop, and right now, according to YouTube, it's getting the feed from this microphone, but there might be another microphone bleeding into it. So there you go. Broke bloke. What's your court win-loss record? You know, I don't keep track of those. And also depends on what you consider win-loss, because 99% of my cases settle, which means my client gets a settlement they're happy with. But in cases that go to trial, you don't win 99% of the cases that go to trial. So it's it's below 99% when you go to trial. Like the video about vacant houses, Camaro time. I have one in another state. I've not been there in about a year. Now I got to go start going more right. Yeah, if you own property, you should visit it from time to time to make sure no one's squatting on it and to make sure nothing else is happening to it. I've read stories recently about squatters moving into homes. I've read about people who had a piece of property that's undeveloped out in the middle of nowhere and somebody just moved onto it. I've also heard of somebody who had a piece of property and somebody just cut a road through it. And somebody just, you come out there one day and all of a sudden there's a road across your property. Where'd that come from? So you got to be on top of these things, because if you leave it for a few years, whatever happens out there might become permanent, might not be anything you can do about it. It depends on the adverse possession laws and the length of time necessary in the state in which you are in. So Jake from State Farm, why don't you have super chats enabled? I'm not even sure what those are. If they cost money, that's probably why I hate to do anything that costs people money. So, JP Boilo, have you received maple syrup from other states? I have not. I mentioned, and by the way, JP, I've still got your, that hurt. I've still got your pure syrup. I can't pronounce it, I'm sorry, but it's maple syrup in French. I've got JP's maple syrup, and he sent this to me from a maple syrup ranch in Canada. I said ranch last time, and people got mad. It's a farm. And so I said, I'm assuming pure maple syrup from Canada has got to be about the best you can get. And I had several people object and say, Steve, you can't be dissing the maple syrup from, like, say, Vermont or New Hampshire. What about? I said, well, the only way to resolve that is if somebody in one of those states sends me a can and I can do an on-camera maple syrup off. We'll figure this out. So, by the way, I did tell you I brought fluids into the room. I apologize. Here, I'll hit the mic button or the mute. And yes, I know this is basically Kool-Aid. I understand that. It's one of the few fluids I had around. So there you go. Alaskans make birch syrup. Jeopardy 4100. What does that taste like, though? I mean, I understand you can get syrup out of other trees, but makes you wonder. Scotty 74. What is the most expensive car you've had a lemon law case on? The first one that pops to mind is I had a Jaguar. I had a guy with a real top end Jaguar, and I know that one was a bit of money. Most expensive product. I've had clients who've owned six-figure RVs, motorhomes, $250,000, $300,000, $400,000. And I've also had clients with extremely expensive boats. But lemon law in Michigan doesn't cover those. So technically speaking, those aren't lemons. But the most expensive automobile, I believe, was a Jaguar. I could be wrong on that, as I don't think I've ever done a Lamborghini or anything terribly exotic like that. So there you go. Daniel Kelly, Super Chat lets people donate cash to you during live streams. It lets them post a highlighted message to you. You should look into it. I'm sure there's a YouTube video out there. Well, yeah, it makes it sound like I'm a stripper then. Like if I'm performing and people are giving me money while I perform. I mean, what other business model is there than being a stripper? I don't understand that. So I'm not going to do that just yet. Andrew Allen, what, a Jag with problems? Yeah. I had a law professor in school who had a Jaguar, and he mentioned it. Somebody goes, "How's it run?" And he looks at him like, "Run? What are you talking about?" So, yeah. Brianna, are you familiar with Prevost luxury RVs? I'm familiar with them. I've never actually represented somebody who had one, so that's probably a good indication. Team Spend 210 busking. Yeah, the idea that you put a guitar case down and you pull a guitar out and start. Hey, you put a guitar case down and you pull out a guitar that your brother made and you start strumming it and playing it, asking for money. Yeah, that'd be busking. I understand that's another business model involving where people perform for live donations, but that's another story altogether. I won't be doing that anytime soon. I apologize. Is there some advantage to doing that? In other words, is there some reason that people would like that other than, because don't get me wrong, if you want to send me money, I appreciate that, but I'm not asking anybody for money. The one thing that I've mentioned before is I do enjoy the t-shirts. And today I'm wearing my Rapala shirt for my Finns in the audience. Double XL, by the way. But I know there are channels out there that have Patreon accounts and Super Chat and Snapchat and whatever the kids are doing. I'm just here. I'm talking. If you enjoy what I'm doing, great. Give me a thumbs up. Maybe subscribe. Maybe tell your friends. But I'm not going to do that unless there's some real advantage that somebody can tell me and say, here's why people want you to do this. Other than you can donate money, because like I said, I don't need that. Jim Adams, can you make a lemon law claim against a vehicle that isn't a lemon but has not been repaired because the dealer service is poor? That's a good question. I've actually covered that before in a video because I believe that many lemons are caused by bad service and not bad manufacturing. So what happens is a car manufacturer builds a car, and today they're so complicated, let's face it, they're complicated. Infotainment centers and electronic control modules and transmission control modules and this module and that module, and it's got electrical problems. You bring it into the dealership, they either can't find it or they think they found it, they give it back to you, the problem comes back. And I've had it happen before where I'm convinced that it's just a dealership that doesn't have the right guys, they can't find the problem, whatever it is. And I think that happens quite a bit. But the way the law is written, it doesn't matter whose fault it is. If the thing can't be fixed under its warranty, the law says the manufacturer's on the hook, and that's too bad for them. They shouldn't put vehicles out there that can't be fixed. So it's an interesting philosophical debate there. So Vintage 1957 says, after you hit the cough button, audio is good for a few minutes. Now it's cracking again. So here's the deal. I'm going to press it several times, and maybe because it hadn't been used in a long time, maybe the context, hang on. A few more times. I could also go like this while I'm talking. Is it doing? Hello? Testing. Okay. I'm done messing with it. Let's see if that happens. Mark Wisner, what was your first car and how old were you? The first car I got to drive on a regular basis was a 1974 Gremlin owned by my parents. And I drove it to high school and back for 1 year. And then when I turned 17, I bought a 1969 Dodge Charger, which I had for a couple years. I was 17 years old at the time, had a lot of fun with that car, managed to stay out of trouble for the most part, and it ignited my love affair with Mopars for quite some time. So, Steve Bennett, my first car was a 77 Gremlin. My sympathies to you, my friend. David Beck, that got terrible. Why? I was playing with that. I was purposely doing that. There you go. Dave Beddoes, you know something? Here is your hundo, okay? You want a $100 bill? There's a $100 bill right there, okay? I almost saved it, but I didn't because I swore a little loud. But I was going to put the hundo the other day behind the curling broom, and it fluttered like 20 feet. I'm like, what? How did it get over there? But I move it. I've forgotten to move it once or twice, but I try to move it from video to video. So there you go. But that was kind of a hard one to see, I admit. Camaro Time, have you checked into doing a class action against General Motors for the cracked dashes? It is in the Tahoe Suburban, Avalanche, Escalade, and others. A friend of mine, a guy I've known for a long time, 50 years, a guy who's my age, but grew up down the street from me. I mean, we rode bicycles together in 1968, okay? Called me, we were talking because he has a Corvette that's got a problem with something cracking in the dash. And he goes, dude, it's a Corvette. You know, and that's one of the saddest things about, it seems a lot of American car companies don't seem to put that much thought into how little things like that, it doesn't affect the drivability of the car. Okay. But it affects the lovability of the car for its owner. And I know people who've bought American cars, and then finally they snap. They're like, you know something? I'm done with this. And then they go on and they buy a Honda or a Toyota or Nissan or whatever. And they go like, it's amazing how they treat me now. And I don't want to get on a soapbox here, but I'll tell you that I'm convinced that one of the primary problems with the American automobile industry is they are so focused on selling you your next car. And the foreign car companies are so focused on selling you your next 5 cars. And that is the difference. So, you know, turn on the TV and all I see now are ads for, you know, employee pricing for everyone. And really, if your cars are that good, do we really have to drop prices every few months to get people to buy them? So just my thought. There you go. Steve Schlosser, what is that black device over your left shoulder? It appears to have 3 mic plugs, some sort of audio panel. Are we referring to this? because that's the Titanic. Unless I'm missing something. I don't see anything else back there with 3 of anything, though. David White, 383. Yeah, my first car did have a 383 in it, and apparently yours did too. Mine had a 383 2-barrel, but I swapped it out for a 4 just because I wanted to spend more money on gas, as gas was hitting $1 a gallon for the first time. JC Regal, Google Caitlin Alex. I will do that. Send me an email. Steve@latozlaw.com. It's at the end of all my videos. And remind me, I'll take a look at that one. KD2RDH Larry, I got a free canoe. It's branded Sears. It looks rough, but it's mine. How big is it and what's it made out of? David Beck, everybody loves the canoe videos. You know, I wish. Nobody watches them, but I like making them. I've got some canoe videos I put up that still have hundreds of views. Hundreds of views. But I just, you know, to me, they're fun to do. Harry Taylor says, looks like the Olympia. Yeah, the Titanic bank is actually not accurate with respect to, like, say, the number of propellers or screws. It's also not built to scale. It's also not life size. It's a bank. Okay, it's a toy, but it's a very, very cool bank made by a Michigan craftsman. It weighs like 25 pounds. It's really cool. I saw it at a store and I thought that's the coolest thing ever. So I got it. 5153 Flash. Have you heard about the drone case in Flint? Yes. Genesee County Parks banned drones and they arrested a guy, even though drones are FAA regulated and it is illegal to regulate them otherwise. Court case is pending now. I've had several people sending me updates on that. I mentioned briefly drones 2 weeks ago, and I got a whole ration of stuff about that. I won't go into it right now. But yeah, there's a case in Michigan. Genesee County is where Flint, the city, is located. And Genesee County Parks have their own rules on drones, which are more draconian than the FAA rules. And the question is, of course, who gets to govern the airspace? And the FAA will, of course, win that battle every single time. JJCEO 40 says, what are your thoughts on kayaks? I've not done much kayaking. I'm not too crazy about it. I don't like sitting that low, and I don't know, my back. Brianna CC, do canoes flip over? Not if you're doing it right. In my canoe that I have, I've tipped it once with the motor on it, and it didn't hurt the motor, but imagine a canoe 17 feet long, and you put a boat motor at the back, and the boat motor weighs 65 pounds, and the canoe weighs, I think, 50 pounds. I could be wrong, 55 maybe. And so the problem is that the boat motor has this head unit that's extremely heavy, and it makes the canoe tippy. So I put outriggers on my canoe so it won't tip over, especially because I got people in my canoe with me, and I don't want to dunk them. And before I had the outriggers on it, I took it out one time, and I was running it on a river in the summertime, and I came through a shallow spot. I didn't realize how shallow it was. And I had also recently adjusted the screw that tightens or loosens and controls how easy the steering is when you turn the tiller. And so as I got into shallow water, I realized I was getting into shallow water. I reached back to grab the unit and tip it. And as I tipped it, it flopped over, and it flopped over the direction that the canoe just started, and the whole thing went over, including me. And so it was a process, as we say. Had to take the motor off, go put it on shore, drag the canoe up, dump it out, put it back in the water, put the motor back on, and all that. So it's one of those things where you do it one time to understand why you don't ever want to do it again, and then you're done. So Wild Bill 57's had both kayaks and canoes. Says kayak is better if alone. Yeah, I suspect they are. That's the one problem with my canoe. It's 17 feet long, and I've had situations where we were paddling it with somebody. And paddling a canoe is just a grind. I mean, I know people out there who love paddling canoes. I didn't buy my canoe to paddle it. I bought my canoe to go and sightsee with it. So how I get there from A to B is one thing, but I want to get there faster. I'm in a hurry. Trap Flicks. Steve, you are a prince among men. I bet you can stop a charging silverback with just a glance. God bless you. Do silverbacks charge? I thought they just kind of like stand there and look at you because they're the wiser members of the troop. But thank you. Can the guy put ice skates on the outriggers? That's an interesting question. Then what would power it, though? Jay Pohl, have you ever canoed the Detroit River? No, but I'm planning on doing more trips this upcoming summer. And one of the trips I want to do is I want to get out on the Detroit River, maybe where the Rouge River comes in, explore that area. And then also, I started the trip down the Tittabawassee River to Midland, and then I was planning on going out to the mouth of Saginaw Bay, but I didn't make it. The water was way too low. But so this upcoming year, I plan on doing that one also, and hopefully finishing that trip, and then probably doing some more exploring up around the thumb of Michigan, and possibly some more even up in the Upper Peninsula on Lake Superior. You haven't lived until you've traveled on Lake Superior in a canoe. So, oh boy, canoe with a motor is faster. Yeah, my canoe will do 12 miles an hour is the fastest I've had it going, and that's checked with a GPS accurately though. So, try the Huron River from Erie to Flat Rock. Yeah, that'd be an interesting one too. The only thing I'm always curious about is the depth of these rivers. Some of the rivers are pretty deep as they go out, but some of them get shallower inland is in a way that you wouldn't really expect. So, Jim Adams, if you moved using your canoe, could you deduct the cost in Michigan? You could, but it would be extremely cumbersome and ineffective, and the cost wouldn't be that high. So there you go. Yeah, Ian says his problems with the mic, and I apologize. We've been discussing this entire 52 minutes we've been here. So, Don Jackson, is it better to buy a pre-owned car or a new car? It depends. You pay a premium when you buy a brand new car, but you get two things. One is you get lemon law coverage, just in case. And number two, you get the comfort of knowing that the car has not been abused, beaten on, and the warranty will be better for you. Even if you buy a late model pre-owned car that has some warranty left on it, you won't get the same kind of good treatment under that warranty as you do if you're the original owner. It's one of those things. It's a fact of life. But if you are good at inspecting cars and you're frugal, good word there, buying a pre-owned car can be a deal, but you're taking a risk. It's a question of how good you are at analyzing those risks. Larry says, my free canoe is fiberglass, about 9 feet long. It looks miniature, but it's very light. Not sure it's seaworthy. Yeah, I'll tell you right now, 9 feet long. That's a short canoe. Mine's 17 feet, which is pretty long. Grumman actually made a 19-foot canoe, and I was actually looking at those for a little while, and then I realized there's no way to get that thing around because I have a trailer that I can put it on, and even on my trailer, 2 or 3 feet hang off the back. And under Michigan law, I am right at the limit, and so a 19-foot canoe wouldn't have fit. So I would have had a hard time moving it legally. Flavio says, have you ever had a motorcycle lemon case? Yes. I've handled quite a few defective motorcycles. Michigan's lemon law does not cover motorcycles, so you have to bring it under the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act and a few other laws. But I've had a few, but haven't had that many. So one of the interesting things about brand new vehicles, motorcycles, is that quite a few people buy them and don't use them, or they only ride them on like sunny days on the weekend. And so it's not uncommon. Someone will call me and say, Steve, I got a motorcycle. It's 3 years old. It's got a couple thousand miles on it. And it's defective. And so they don't discover the problems right away because they're not driving it hardly at all. So it's a little different world. The world of motorcycles and RVs and boats, very, very different than the world of automobiles. Scotty, I'm unsubscribing because of your audio problems. Yeah, sorry about that. Resubscribe when I get it fixed. I suspect it's just this button. Ground Prepper, Steve, I'm in Midland, Michigan. Let me know when you come up. Hey, probably, I'm guessing June. It's got to be warm enough to where I can be in a canoe and not be uncomfortable, but I want the water to be high enough to where, so I'm guessing June-ish. There you go. Stephen Van Rokel, what does the robot lady think of your canoe? She's never been in the canoe, so I don't know if she has any thoughts on canoeing or not. I'll have to ask her. Corinne says, wrong. I bought a used one and most of the repairs not covered. Spent $1,000 first year. Told I bought it as is. Well, yeah, that's a vehicle with no warranty on it. As is vehicle has no warranty on it. So if you buy a late model car and the warranty transfers over, that's what I'm talking about. So there you go. Dan Fazzini says, no audio issues here on TV. You know, isn't this world a wonderful place? But just to be on the safe side, I will let you know that next week I'm going to remove this box because number one, I haven't actually needed it. It turns out that despite the fact I'm sitting here by myself watching TV or playing on the internet, I feel like I've got a really bad cold. My nose is running, I'm coughing, I'm sneezing. Turns out if I'm talking like this constantly, I don't have those problems. So I think I found the cure for the common cold, and that is just to yak incessantly. Y-A-K, yak, which I think is also an animal that lives in Asia. 5153 Flash, a canoe is not good for a first date. I don't think it's probably good for a date at all. JJ CEO 40, do you ever pull water skiers behind your canoe? I don't think I could. What's the minimum speed to get a water skier out of the water? It's got to be like 20 or 30, right? But yeah, at 10 or 11 miles per hour, no. And I suspect if I had somebody dragging behind me, I couldn't do the 11 miles an hour either. So, ever been to Lake Gitche Gumi? Stashu, I assume you're asking about Lake Superior, because that's what they call it, at least in some of the renditions of that word. And I have, in fact, been to Lake Superior many, many times. I've had my canoe on it many, many times. So, Steve Brannon, Subaru Brat was my first car. Don't remember the year. Yeah, the Subaru Brat was that little thing. It looked like a pickup truck, but it was a car. But it had a back, and then it had two seats facing backwards. I don't know how true it is, but the urban legend was that by putting the two seats in the back, they got to classify it as a passenger vehicle as opposed to a truck. I don't know if it's true or not, but a friend of mine had one, and we used to make fun of him because I was growing up in a suburb of Detroit, and when somebody our age bought a foreign car, we made fun of them. That's what we did back then. Times have changed. And now, you know, I say heaven forbid a Toyota and I get death threats. So there you go. Gordon Lightfoot. Yeah. That's one of the places where you'll hear Gitche Gumi used as another name for Lake Superior. Ernest Prince, is it true the lake never gives up her dead? You know, it's interesting about Lake Superior. Lake Superior is one of the largest bodies of fresh water on Earth. It's largest if you measure it by surface area. If you measure it by volume, it's third. Lake Baikal in Russia is a larger lake by volume. And Lake Superior is very, very large and very, very cold. And as a result of that, it is true that many things disappear in that lake that are never found. And I've told the story before about Douglas Houghton. I wrote a book about him, and he drowned in Lake Superior. They found his body the next year washed up on a beach that I visited this past summer. And one of the guys with him, they never found. They literally never found the guy. And so his body is probably out to sea and down at the bottom someplace. And that's just the thing. Lake Superior, I mean, most big lakes are impressive if you stop and look at them. So is the ocean. But if you go and watch Lake Superior over a period of time, you will see that there are some days where it's glassy smooth. Just as far as the eye can see, it's like a sheet of glass. And another day you come back and there's waves 5-10 feet tall, just destructive waves, so loud that you can't hear yourself think. And the weird part about it is that it can go from one to the other in the space of a couple hours. and that's one of the reputations of Lake Superior that is very, very true. And that's also probably one of the things that lends itself into the mystique of the Edmund Fitzgerald's sinking, because she sank during a very, very severe storm at the end of a shipping season. And, you know, there were other ships on the lake that survived, But the thing about it is the weather out there is so nasty, so unpredictable, and just so, it literally changes so quickly that, you don't know what to expect out there. So horrible story. MH08, yes, and very, very deep, referring to the lake. And the lake is deep in spots, but it's also shallow in spots. And that's also one of the things deceptive about it. One of the theories about the Edmund Fitzgerald's sinking is that it had gone the northern route and then was heading back down, and it passed a spot that was very, very shallow. And one of the theories is that it may have bottomed out as it passed through that spot because it didn't have its radar wasn't working, so its navigation was not quite up to snuff. So it's possible that it bottomed out, and that may be one of the things that caused it, because despite the fact there's extremely deep spots in the lake, there's also very, very shallow spots, and there's no logic to it. The lake was formed partially by receding glaciers, and glaciers just dig where they dig. I mean, they're like gophers, only bigger. And so there are shallow spots out there as well. Stephen Van Rokel, when you're alone in your canoe, do you feel like you're a sovereign citizen? Well, the thing is that I can never be alone in my canoe, because with a boat motor and me weighing what I do, if I'm alone in it, the canoe sits like this. So I've always got to have a passenger in the front to hold the front end down for me. And I've actually told passengers that, by the way, just so you know, one of the reasons you're here is you're holding the front end down for me. But I'm not just saying that to let them know for the comedy's sake, but I'm also telling them that because if we stop someplace and they stand up and get out of the boat, if I'm not prepared, then the boat does this. So we always pull aside, and I've got to stand up. I got to get one of my legs out first before they start getting out. Otherwise, as they say, hilarity ensues. So JJ CEO, is the Edmund Fitzgerald in Canadian waters now? I believe it is. And I can also tell you that it's been designated I forgot what the term they use for it is, but it's off limits to divers. Despite the fact it's in extremely deep water, there are divers capable of diving to those depths. And so they actually decided to designate it, like, in essence, as a grave site, and you cannot disturb it. You cannot go there. You can go above it. You can boat over it, but you cannot dive down to it anymore without special permission. And it is in Canadian waters, but that's something that the American government and the Canadians have worked on, I believe. I can tell you that I taught a Michigan history class years ago, and we talked about the Edmund Fitzgerald. And so, as a throwaway question on an exam, I asked the question. I said, "What is the Edmund Fitzgerald, and where is it today?" And a correct answer would have been the Edmund Fitzgerald is a large iron ore boat that sank in Lake Superior, and was famous because of the fact that it, disappeared so quickly with all hands. It's made famous in a song by Gordon Lightfoot, and it reminds us of the dangers of maritime shipping and the vastness of Lake Superior. And today it rests on the bottom of the lake. And somebody who apparently not only missed that day of class, but missed everything else in our society about the Edmund Fitzgerald, said it's a boat, and today it is in a museum. And the question I have for you is, what kind of a museum would you have to fit the Edmund Fitzgerald inside of it? So there you go. Oh, Mika. Unfortunately, I don't know much Finnish. I know Mika, but not Mika. I like to go boating. I need ballast. Michael Clark. That's pretty much it. and by the way, I do tell people that if we're going canoeing, you understand that you will get wet. You're going to get splashed. Now, my goal is to never go swimming. We're not going swimming. And so I always tell people before we launch, just to let you know, that my goal is that you will not go swimming today. And so far, I've kept my word with every single person who's gone in my canoe with me. None of them have gone swimming with me out the side of the canoe. So that's my sacred vow. But I admit that as a maritimer, or a Navitimer. As a person on a boat, you are always operating at the whims and mercies of the waters that you are treading upon. So there you go. Ernest Prince, ever taken the ferry over to Manitowoc? You mean the ferry across Lake Michigan? Yeah, a couple times. When I was in high school, I did a bike trip. We took the ferry across. We bicycled around the Door Peninsula, and then we took the ferry back. And I don't know if it was the Badger or not, because I think there may have been more than one, but it was one of those large, car boat ferries. Very, very cool experience. One of those things that's just neat, and it's almost like a bygone era, as they say. Nick 50. Hey, Leto, do you have any relatives in Finland? Distant relatives, but nothing. It would be further out than cousins. It would be like second and third cousins, that kind of thing. I saw one. What weight range do you need up front, David? I think I can get away with 100 pounds. I think I don't need much more than 100. But like I said, the problem I have is I weigh 200, just a tad over, and then the motor weighs 65. So put 275 pounds at the end of that canoe, and it's all back at the transom. I mean, I'm sitting here, the motor is here, and it's 16 and a half feet of boat here. So it's a teeter-totter. But I think 100 pounds up front's enough to hold it down. So I've never had a problem with somebody who's too light. Let's put it that way. So Jeopardy 4100. I love the Belle Isle Museum with the Chris Crafts. Yeah, I run by that every year because the Free Press Marathon runs around Belle Isle. Runs right by the it's called the Dawson Great Lakes Museum, and they've got a bunch of really cool old hydroplanes from the 50s and 60s era on display. And I love that era of boat racing, those old boats. So, Jim Adams, the Gordon Lightfoot rendition is wrong because it said they knew the boat was doomed. However, the last radio transmission was, "We are holding our own now." Yeah, and that's, Jim, that's true. And that's often the case with people who write songs. They're doing things for dramatic purposes and artistic license. And the ship sank very, very quickly. And they did some investigations afterwards. I've read some of them. I've also read books on it. And it probably wasn't until a few years later that all of the details came out. But the Edmund Fitzgerald was out on the water, and another boat was nearby. I believe it was the Arthur Anderson. And the Arthur Anderson and the Edmund Fitzgerald were communicating back and forth. And the Edmund Fitzgerald had radar on board that malfunctioned. And they let the Arthur Anderson know that. They said, "Hey, our radar has malfunctioned. Can you guys help us?" So the Arthur Anderson stayed in closer contact with the Fitzgerald and was explaining to them, like, here's your position, go this way, go that way, trying to guide them basically by using their own radar. And somewhere in those communications, they weren't gab. It wasn't a gab fest. They were just communicating like professionals. And somewhere in there was a comment made about worsening conditions. And the captain of the Fitzgerald radioed back and said, "We are holding our own now." And that was it. And then they disappeared from radar and they were gone. And they later went out and looked, and they did fairly quickly discover that they're pretty certain the boat had gone down with all hands. But in the song, I think he wanted to stretch out the dramatic moment of, a bunch of guys who know they're about to die, and the people on board that ship did not exactly have a lot of notice as to what was happening, if they had any notice at all. So crazy story, but obviously very, very sad as well. Andrew Allen, when the legend becomes fact, print the legend. And that's what happens, especially if they get carved in stone, which they often do. Jeopardy 4100, if you get a Stormy Cromer, would you wear it? I don't wear a lot of hats. I'm not a hat-wearing guy, so I can't make promises on that. On camera, I might put it on once, but I wouldn't wear it for an entire show. Because then people would be convinced I'd lost my toupee, and they go, "Wait, he's wearing a hat now because he's lost his toupee." So, Gijo79, hi from Slovenia. Glad you checked in. I like when people check in from faraway places. I've not known too many people from Slovenia, but I've known some famous people from Slovenia, including a woman named Annie Clements. That was her married name. And she was married to a miner in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan in 1913, nicknamed Big Annie. She's a hero of the strike of 1913, and she was Slovenian. Dave Beddoes, have you ever been in an EMFA car? No, I have not. I've seen them at car shows, never ridden in one, never spent much time in them. Canoe the Channel and Gross Eel. Beautiful homes. Yeah, J Paul. I might try that. That's another area I'd like to check out. There's a lot of places around there, places on the water that you can check out by canoe or boat. That'd be pretty cool. Ground Preppers is maybe a little metal detecting around Midland area. Yeah, I bring my metal detector almost everywhere in the summertime, and it's commonly in the back of my truck. And if I see places to detect, I jump out and do some detecting. So I've done a ton of detecting in Michigan, including the Midland area. Stuart Thompson, how do you find time to do 2 videos a day? I mentioned earlier that the videos are pretty much shot in real time, meaning a 15-minute video takes me 15 minutes to shoot, give or take. So, a gentleman asks, do you know who Eric Brandt is? And do you think that a $1,000 cash only bond is reasonable for a homeless vet? I do not know the story. I will tell you, however, that a bond being set before you show up for trial is put there in place to guarantee you show up. And one of the things that would make a court wonder about whether you're going to show up or not is if you have a permanent residence. Because if someone is homeless, they don't show up for a court, how do we find you? That's the concern. But again, I don't know anything about the case, so I won't speculate beyond that. So, Matt D says amphicars are pretty cool. I've been in a few. Yeah, I've seen them. And they look interesting. Just never been in one. So, Downhill for Life. Steve, what's the longest trip you've taken on your canoe, length and duration? Believe it or not, I did a trip, and there's a video of it on the channel where I took my canoe one day, and this won't sound that impressive, but it actually is in my mind. With a friend of mine named Michael, we got in my canoe at the mouth of the Tequamanon River on Whitefish Bay, which is where the Edmund Fitzgerald was trying to get that day. And we went up the Tequamanon River all the way to the lower falls, the lower Tequamanon Falls, and then all the way back. And that's 32 miles round trip. But we did the entire thing in a morning. We left at like 9 in the morning and got back by 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So 32 miles up and back on a river. And that was pretty cool. I've done some other 15, 20-mile runs. The main thing with that is it's a question of whether you're going out and back or going from point to point. Because if you're point to point, you got to have someone pick you up or something. But this upcoming summer, I've got some other plans for some trips that may or may not be longer than that. I'm not in this for endurance. I'm in this just to go out and get some cool sightseeing done. 5153 Flash, have you ever been on television? Yes, many times. Too many to count. Done a lot of local news. I've also been in a bunch of documentaries. I've been in a documentary about the Italian Hall disaster, a documentary about Bobby Isaac, a couple other documentaries. And then also, I've been, not so much lately, but I used to get consulted a lot by different local TV stations when they needed someone to talk about consumer law. They go, hey, and here's consumer lawyer Steve Leto. And I'd be on TV for about 15 seconds talking about something. So I've done that. Somebody else asked, NCR disabled submarine vet, what's the best thing you found metal detecting? I did a video on that called the $16,000 belt buckle. It's a belt buckle I found. It was worth $16,000. And I actually sold it for $16,000. And I found that with my metal detector a couple of years ago and put the video up. That was the story I told for my 100,000 subscriber video when I hit the threshold of 100,000 subscribers. And it's a true story. I had quite a few people go, Steve, it's public now. Did you pay taxes on it? And I'm like, yeah. Do you think I'd really tell the story if I didn't? So What's really funny is people who forget that I'm an attorney and want to remind me about the existence of a law. So, yes, I pay taxes on my income. So, have you named your canoe? If not, how about the Big Fits too, Jim Adams? I did not name my canoe in that sense, but I do have down the side of it lettering that says, "Please put me back in water." And that's a reference that guys my age will get. But there was a book called Paddle to the Sea. And Paddle to the Sea was a children's book. It's aimed at like between like say second and fifth grade. It's a picture book with stories. In fact, it's within arm's reach over here somewhere, but I'm not exactly sure. So I'm not going to lean off camera because if it's not there, I'll feel stupid. But Paddle to the Sea was written by a guy, and it describes the Great Lakes and how they interplay with each other and how important they are to the wildlife and the humans and how they form the region. And it tells a story about a little native boy who carves a canoe and he paints it and he writes on the underside of it, "I am a paddle to the sea. Please put me back in water." And he throws it in the lake that's north of Lake Superior, and it goes by itself down into Lake Superior, and it winds up having all these adventures as it goes through the entire Great Lakes system and gets out to the St. Lawrence Seaway. And it's a wonderful, wonderful story because it makes children think about this kind of stuff, about how these lakes are all interconnected, how many people make their money off the lakes, how the lakes are important to the region and all that. And so when I bought the canoe, I remembered reading the book as a child, and it was written on the underside of the canoe. It said, "Please put me back in water." So I actually got the lettering and put it down the sides. "Please put me back in water." Sadly, they don't teach that book in school anymore, and a lot of kids don't know what it is, and they see that and they go, "Huh?" But, I don't expect all of my jokes to be gotten by everybody. All I need is one person to get it and laugh, and I'm happy. Michael Thacker, hey, Steve, checking in from Kentucky. Welcome. Glad you made it. Stuart Thompson, I watched the Italian Hall video. Very good. Thank you. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I made my own video that I put up on Christmas Eve, and I told the story. This is the chair from the Italian Hall right here, which is often sitting next to me. Silent witness. But also there's a documentary called Red Metal, which you can find on YouTube. It's a PBS production that I was in. That's available also if you want to learn more about the Italian Hall disaster. John Mick, do you play guitar? No, I do not. I just own this guitar that my brother made. Cop Cuffs, did you take a tax deduction for the white metal detector after finding the belt buckle? Yes, I did. That's the thing. And now I'm not a CPA. I can't advise you. But my CPA explained to me how I could take the value I achieved with the belt buckle and deduct from it the expenses that went into it. Hence, my metal detector got paid for by that belt buckle. So, Wild Bill, if I tell a joke and it makes me laugh, it's a good joke. You don't know how true that is. I mean, you must, and so do I. I will admit that occasionally I'm like Arthur, the good Arthur in the first one. Okay, W. Moore, where occasionally I just start cracking up because I thought of something funny. So, 5153 Flash. I went out over a mile in Lake Michigan in a canoe when young. Hard to believe. Looking back at it, was I lucky or crazy? That's a tough question because one of the things that you want to be doing in a canoe is always asking yourself, if I got in trouble right here, the canoe went over, what would happen? Okay. So on board, I'm wearing a life vest. My passenger's got a life vest. And my first thought, of course, is safety for ours, our own safety. And then, of course, I would not want to be dumping gasoline in the lake, things of that nature. So I'm trying to stay near shore. So I'm far enough offshore to run the motor, but I'm close enough shore to where if I have to, I can turn in. But if you were to go a mile out, for instance, in a canoe paddling, okay, and you turn around and suddenly the weather gets bad, what if the wind shifts and you're trying to paddle into the wind to get to shore from a mile? That might be difficult. So you got to be careful. You may have been lucky. Michael Duzech, I saw Paddle to the Sea as a short film. Didn't realize it was a book. Yeah, I've seen the film too, and the film's not that good. It's a low budget film. I think shot by somebody in Canada, but it's a great story. And if you have children in particular, I think the book is well worth looking into. But the movie, like I said, I think it's on YouTube also. It's not well done in that sense that it doesn't convey the same value. I mean, I remember years later thinking about different things I learned in school and where I got certain ideas from. And I remember actually thinking to myself, like, yeah, Paddle to Sea was actually like an important book in my education. It's one of the things that really got me appreciating the region, the Great Lakes region, which is, of course, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and so on, New York. And you start thinking about how the presence of those lakes makes such a difference, making this region what it is. So, looking for hookers, name for a canoe. XY call yet. Hey, Steve, your mic is crackling. Audio is pretty poor. Yeah, we've been having a discussion about that for the last, I don't know, 102 minutes. I'm sorry, 120 minutes. Is that possible? No, I'm sorry, 81 minutes. Wow, my math is bad. See, I have a cold, okay? So that's why my math is off. Mark K, dream car you want to buy? Well, it depends on what your definition of dream car is. I've already talked about something about buying a Viper. I might be buying a Viper this summer. So we'll see. JJCEO40, do you conduct a safety briefing similar to airlines prior to canoeing? Not really, but I make my passenger put the vest on and buckle it. State law only requires you to have the flotation device in the canoe, but I require my passengers to wear it. They wear theirs, I wear mine. And I also tell them, if you go in the water, your number one concern is to make sure you're okay. Then check on me. And they go, what about you? And I go, no, my number one concern is to make sure you're okay. Then I check on me. Okay, I'm the captain. This is my fault. So the number one concern is the passenger. Number two concern is me. But like I said, we're not going swimming, so who cares? JP, how many Jeeps did you own? I've owned about 15 over the years, own 2 right now. I've only owned the one. I owned a Jeep, I believe it was a 95, the one with the square headlights. Don't ask. But I have a brother who owned an older Jeep that's pretty cool. And then, of course, I had an M35A2 deuce and a half, which is not a Jeep, but it's similar in the sense that it's a thing that will go anywhere. So I like the Jeep mindset at the very least. Ronald Knight, have you ever had to take a polygraph? No, I've never taken one. I'd be interested to take one because if you think about it, when this is one of the problems with polygraphs, lie detectors, is that if someone takes a polygraph and the polygrapher says they failed, no one knows. Okay, I mean, no one knows the person's lying except for them. So if I took a polygraph and I told the truth and the guy told me I was lying, I'd lose all faith in him. But if I lied and thought I did a good job and the guy goes, dude, you're lying, I'd be like, oh my God, these things work. So it would be very curious to see. I'd be very curious to see how I do on one, but I've not done one, so no. Michael Thacker, hey, I just watched the story of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Can you give any local information about it? I've read some books on it. The only thing I can tell you is there's a Maritime Church in Detroit, and it's right there, downtown Detroit, right on the water. In fact, I run the Free Press Marathon. We come up out of the tunnel, and I believe that as we turn left, it's right there. But it's right near where the tunnel is on the Detroit side. And every year, on the anniversary of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald, they have a ceremony there, and they ring a bell for each victim, and it's a very, very moving thing they've done, and they will continue to do so. So that's the only thing I can really add to what I've talked about before. Do Jeeps still have rust issues up north? I don't know about Jeeps specifically, but cars do. We dump salt on our roads up here, like we're seasoning bad food. And cars get rusted up so badly. I mean, you'll see cars up here that are just rust buckets. I mean, it's horrible. And in fact, somebody very, very earlier in the chat asked about the roads in Michigan, and our roads are horrible. And it's not just the winter; it's a lack of maintenance. It's a lack of planning. It's a lack of caring on behalf of some people. But our roads are bad, and it does quite a number on the cars up here. There are some portions of the state that they use sand on the roads because they're so close to the water. They don't want the salt getting in the water. And in those areas, it's not as tough on your car, but then again, it's tough on driving because you're trying to drive someplace and the sand doesn't do a whole lot to help you with traction. So there you go. Rita Hanla Matla. I wear a wetsuit and life vest on board. Safety first. There you go. I don't go out in weather that's so bad that I would need a wetsuit. But the life vest I keep on. I purposely bought 2 life vests that don't look dorky. Okay? And let's face it, you hand somebody one of those old orange ones that goes around your neck like this, the type that you see on old boats, and they're not going to want to wear it. But if I hand you one that looks kind of cool, you don't feel bad wearing it. So I purposely got 2 that look good. Alan Matthews, hey, Steve, love your channel. Hey, Alan, thank you for checking in, and I appreciate the concept, the comment. So, my friend's dad's wheelhouse is in the museum, the William Clay Ford II. J. Pole. Yeah, it's always cool when they save a piece of a boat like that. Obviously you can't fit the whole boat in a museum, contrary to anything anybody would tell you, but you can save a piece of it. Lee Walker, what's up from Lapeer? Yeah, I was just on Van Dyke about 2 weeks ago, heading north, but I turned off of it before I got to Lapeer. Used to pass through Lapeer all the time on my way up to Bad Axe, Michigan. And Lapeer is a neat little town. Stuart Thompson, there seem to be a lot of YouTube videos on the Edmund Fitzgerald. Any recommendations? I can't think of any off the top of my head because I know that they've done a lot of documentaries on it. And over time, they've gotten more information. But I've seen a bunch where they speculate about what caused it to sink and so on. And I've not seen any good explanations that I've been willing to accept over any others just yet. So not really. Jerry G, Indiana's roads are not good either. But you can always tell when you cross the state line into Ohio because the roads are so much better. I saw a comedian, and I will admit that this is not my joke. I got it from a comedian, but I forgot his name. But I saw a comedian about a year ago live at a place in Hawley, Michigan, Hawley Hotel. And the comedian goes, the roads in Michigan are bad, so when blind people from Ohio are driving north, they can know when they've gotten to Michigan. He told it better than that, but it was funny. Jim Adams, the bell from the Edmund Fitzgerald is in the Whitefish Point Museum. You can see it when the museum is open. The sad part is they polished it inexplicably. I do not know why. They pulled the bell off the boat, and the bell is considered to be like the symbol of the soul of the boat. The bell is the thing off the boat that most represents the boat. And they took the bell in a very solemn ceremony off the boat, and they replaced it. In fact, I believe they actually put another bell on the boat, but they took the bell and they put it in a museum. And the first thing they did at the museum was they took a grinder and polished it up, made it all bright and shiny. And no one knows why they did that. And it mortified many people, myself included. But if you want to go see the bright, shiny bell off the Edmund Fitzgerald, yeah, it's the Whitefish Point Museum. So there you go. Alec Grolaman, did you ever get the apron and cookbook from Thailand? Yes, thank you. And here's the thing. I got them, and I think I mentioned them in one of my mail opening videos, but if I didn't, but I did get them. Thank you very much, but I got them. Yes. I get a lot of stuff. I try to open it on camera or mention it on camera, but that may have slipped through the cracks. Hey, somebody says, where's a reference here? Somebody, hey, Steve, I live in New England. Why don't car manufacturers better undercoating of cars? Cars are getting better. They're still not really good. They're getting better. I got a better question. If you live in New England, can you or somebody get me some maple syrup from New England so we can check it out and compare it to the maple syrup from Canada? And if it costs money and if the money is the obstacle, email me directly. I'll trade you a book or something. I don't want you to donate something you don't want to donate, but I need someone. I need someone to get me a can of this. Somebody says tap the cough button, see if it helps any. So here we go. Let's see if that helps any or not. Probably not. Like I said, I'll remove this device and we'll move on with our lives. So, ground prep are 200 pounds okay for the front of the canoe? Oh, sure. The canoe is rated to, I think, like 850 pounds of ballast or payload. So me 200, engine 65, 265, another 204. Yeah, no, actually, I could put 3 adults in the canoe if I had to, if I wanted to. But of course, then you're riding kind of low. So, but 200 pounds up front, not a problem. So, Andrew Allen says, I'm waiting until spring when I make syrup. I'll send you some when I do. There you go. How do you deal with Michigan's high cost of car insurance? I pay it. We've got some of the highest costing car insurance in the nation for a variety of reasons. But sometimes there's not much you can do about it. Chris Lasseline now says the audio is much better. There you go. Gary Pope, love your channel. Here in Georgia, we had a notorious dealership called Bill Hurd Chevy, who got sued. Hey, car dealers get sued all the time. It's part of the cost of doing business. So, Robert Odell, I tried sending you some maple, but they wouldn't deliver to your P.O. box. What? Really? If you're sending to through UPS, United Parcel Service, yeah, they won't ship to a P.O. box, but everybody else will. I apologize. In that case, use my office address. At the end of my videos is also an office address. I tell people to send my correspondence to my P.O. box because it keeps it separate. I come into the office with a pile of stuff. They go, oh, Steve, you got more stuff. David Stewart claims Missouri has got great maple syrup. And if I say Missouri, then I'll get corrected. Carl Lynn, the Whitefish Museum is in Montana. That could be, but the Whitefish Point Museum, it's the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum on Whitefish Point, is in Michigan, northern Michigan. Sensei J, ever think the society is too litigious? Believe it or not, it's not. We hear about wacky lawsuits because they make the news, and that's why they make the news, because they're wacky. The bulk of the lawsuits, if you actually went to your local district court and counted lawsuits, about 97% of them are collection lawsuits being filed by credit card companies. I kid you not. And in some places, it's higher than that. And so if you said, let's reduce lawsuits by 50%, you can just get rid of half the credit card lawsuits, and suddenly, there'd be nothing going on. So yeah, I did a video recently about, I don't know, the woman who fell off the pregnant camel and filed a lawsuit. Video goes up tomorrow. Do we need that lawsuit? I don't know. Okay. But there aren't those lawsuits being filed every single day. That lawsuit gets filed once a year. That's why it makes the news. There you go. Alex Grolemond, thank you, Steve. I love your videos. It makes me feel more connected with the West from Thailand. I hope so. JJ CEO 40, have you ever eaten lutefisk? I assume that's the Swedish thing. No, I have not. So, unfortunately, we're getting towards the end of our time together. We hit the 1.5 hour mark a moment ago. Do civil juries in Michigan have to be unanimous? Here in North Carolina, they do keep insurance rates down. No, they don't. No, in fact, in Michigan, civil juries, if you have a jury of 6, and the parties can agree to different things, but they can often go 5 out of 6 is good, or I've even seen them go 4 out of 6 is good if they want to. But the parties can usually stipulate to one or the other, but if they won't stipulate to it, then 5 out of 6 will get you a verdict in a civil setting as opposed to a criminal setting. And then finally, someone asks, have you been to the Maritime Museum in Duluth? I've not been there. If it's good, I'll check it out one of these days. I've been to Duluth a few times. It's a beautiful, beautiful town. But that's going to wrap it for me today. I apologize for the sound issues. Like I said, probably the fault of this thing I installed today. I had it in my collection of my equipment over here, and I thought I'd need it today because I am getting over a cold, which is why I've got the fluids on the set. But I managed to make it through an hour and a half without having any coughing fits. Nothing crazy happened. Nobody got hurt. So, at least not me. So, that's going to wrap it up today. I will disconnect this thing. That should solve our sound problems for next week. In the meantime, thank you for the videos that you watch. I appreciate that. Stay tuned for an upcoming video with me and Leonard French on my channel. And if you haven't seen it, go watch the video I did with Leonard on his channel, The Lawful Masses. It went up on Friday. Just look for Lawful Masses Leonard French. You'll find us. We had a great time. So thanks for everything, guys. Thanks for watching, commenting. We'll be back next week. Same time, same place. Till then, behave yourself. Bye-bye.